Now, the question that came up here is, okay, well, now, given this crisis, we're seeing a lot of, companies cutting the costs. And as we know, for those out there who are listening and who are in innovation, is always one of the first things that are cut in the companies that don't understand kind of the deep value of that. Because the problem with innovation so far is, it's not an institutionalized budget. R&D is an institutionalized budget, but again, innovation is not R&D. R&D is products and technology and science. Innovation is creating value for customers and business models that can scale. Now, there is no institutionalized budget for that, so it's always the first thing that will fall. But again, those companies that really figured it out, they institutionalize their innovation practices, they institutionalize their innovation ecosystem, and it won't be at risk in a crisis like this. And I think, and I'm throwing this question back to you, Rita and Yves, do you see some companies that because they created those ecosystems and made them robust, that they're better at responding in today's environment? Again, it's a very extreme environment. It's a black swan. Nobody prepared for it. But do you see, both of you, do you see companies that are better prepared for this than others because they maybe had, already that exploratory attitude?
I can start, or Yves, did you want to start? So, yeah, I think, so let's go back to, and I know you're a recovering academic, Alex, so at one point you lived in the world of theory, right? So if you go back though to the theory of what makes any system resilient, right? And I think one of our problems with the way we've constructed economies today is we've allowed ourselves to forget that you can't just optimize for the perfect setting. You need to also build resilience into your systems. That's why airplanes have 400 million parts. There's redundancy, right? So you need redundancy, you need variety, you need diversity of input, and you need slack resources. And so I think the companies that have set themselves up to do better have not run totally lean. They've allowed themselves to have pockets of resource that they can then mobilize and redirect. And I would also add, if I look at many great companies that have gotten themselves into horrible financial situations and dug their way out of it, one of the things you'll see is that they have not forgotten about innovation. So the textbook case here would be Alan Mulally at Ford, who basically said, well, we had to borrow a little money to do some house renovation. That's kind of how he framed having to restart the innovation engine at Ford, even though they were in financial distress. He said, eventually we'll no longer be in financial distress, and by the time we get out the other end, we really want to have, a very robust portfolio of innovations going forward. So, Yves, any thoughts on that? And then we'll have about 5 minutes for more encouraging or general advice for our listeners.
In some small companies, like in the agriculture, which is not high-tech at all, we have seen here around some companies which are able to switch quite quickly because they had some reserve or some additional resource that they didn't explore so far. So I think it's still possible. It's very difficult to say at this stage because we are in this crisis since maybe 2-3 weeks. So we will see in a couple of months which kind of company could emerge and will be a little bit better. Also, I would like to add something about ecosystem. I think this idea of circular economy was a way of encouraging, if you want something, because if you want to address a clear environment issue, and trying to reduce CO2 and so on, I think alone it will be very complicated. And so I guess that this kind of thing could be also a leverage to explore new ways of collaborating inside some new kind of ecosystem. I think it will be also a leverage for doing it.